I first start off with looking at the old ones. I had a few other ideas, and you can see I kind of went through a couple iterations before I landed on what I ended up going with, which was the more black armor with the unique belt and less from the movies and whatnot. Then I also do research on older past versions and put that to the side as well. Grab my reference photo. I have a 3D program I use. Then draw from that. Then I take that and beef it up a bit, make it a bit more Thor-like. I also do a lot of references from Norse mythology and whatnot, getting it all correct. Here I was exploring different tattoo options. You can see just like a whole bunch of different versions. I wasn't for sure yet if I wanted it on him or not. I ended up just choosing a general, more simplified pattern that glows when he uses the hammer at like full power. This was an older concept. I don't think it made it into the final one, but it's there. Then I put a general area where the armor goes so I can see what shows and what not shows. Then I started fleshing out the pencil drawing. Here you can see I did like just a cape and pants look with showing off the tattoos, but I didn't really think it was super Thor-like in the end, so I ended up cutting it. But I thought it was a cool idea, so I wanted to include it and test it out. Then I took in a sketch showing how like all the different armor fits over the pieces. And then I started just lowering it down the opacity and start fleshing out each individual piece, sketching the details and what goes where. Then when I was happy with it, I started with a light inking across all the outlines. This was just on the basic parts that are always showing no matter the form. Then I added like a darker outline to certain parts. I also did like a separate area on the extra armor that comes on later. Then I threw in color flats for each color. I wanted to try to keep it simple so it reads easier and more bold on the pages. And then I also did the extra flats for the other armor pieces that come on later. I always check my reference too, just to go back to the main pieces I'm pulling inspiration from and making sure everything's there from the original concept. Then I go into shading. I add different shading, like very light amounts of shading. I try to keep it simple for these redesigns, just like because I'm making so many. I didn't want to get too intense about what direction it's coming from. And then as you can see, I took the outlines and made them the color that they're on top of, so it kind of makes it a bit more realistic and easier to read. Then I started adding the details in the lighted versions, like the hammer lighting up and stuff like that. I also looked at older versions of Storm and of what I've done myself, and then other versions that Thor has had done by other artists, and use that in an account. And then I applied it to the hammer and the armor pieces where it would go. Also where it would come from his hands, as if he was just using it without the hammer, kind of like in Ragnarok. Here I tested out the tattoos and some other like color ideas. Not all of it worked, but it gave me routes that I could go down or explore more or not to use. I ended up wanting to keep it simple, so I just kept it with the black. And this is what it looks like with the lightning coursing through the armor and the finished armor. As you can see, I kind of watch stuff on the side too. I always watch either like Star Trek or Avengers cartoons, stuff like that. I always got to keep my mind occupied while I'm doing all of the detail work. And then I have all the different versions here. It goes from like barely any armor to fully armored up with the hood, the cape, the shoulder pads, shoulder armor, I guess, and like the chainmail underneath. I did a lot of research into like how the armor should fit and like previous versions and things like that. I'm bringing that in. This is my guide for what I do next. So once I finish with Thor, I move him aside and go to the next one. Then working on the logo, I take previous versions and notable versions as I'm figuring that out. And then I do a basic sketch next to the characters. I have a good idea. I put it up next to a lineup of the other logos too to make sure it doesn't look too similar to other ones and stands out on its own. Here I took the font and edited it up, chose a good one, and kind of mixed a few just to make it more of a handmade quality. And I went in and used rulers to make sure everything matches up correctly and the spacing and all that was good. I also worked on the gradient for the gold outline. Most of the covers I like to have a flat logo, but I felt Thor could use a little bit of shine. I also envisioned like in print that being gold foil and kind of shining depending on the way you tilt it. I tried it out on different previous covers as well just to see if it fit the tone. Then I dropped it into the preview title, and I have a template for different covers. I use that as well, drop that in there to test it out. Once it was looking good in all different forms, I made this cover. Here you can see I just took the artwork that I previously did and quickly dropped it there. I'm not trying to make anything spectacular, just try to get the idea of the art style across and how the logo goes on it. Also tested out in mock-ups to see what it looks like in real life. And then I made this poster that's more of a movie style poster just to get the idea of the character and title across in a fun different way. And then I also used it on a mock-up.